Well, I mean, honestly, Jim, you and I have been talking about this for a while, and this is the very first iteration of us trying to, create an atmosphere where we can speak to the people who work across our state and in corrections and different sheriff's offices in an attempt to say, hey, get to know this person a little better, something that isn't scripted, something that isn't, you have a laundry list of questions to ask, but just kind of a get to know you session. So while I'm sure we'll touch on plenty of correction stuff, that's not the intent, it's really just to get to know each other. And not from my standpoint, because, I've known you since, I think we first met either in like 2009 or 2010 when I was working for county government at the time. But I guess the first thing we can do is we can start off with, what do you do? And I mean, of course, I know exactly what you do, but anybody who want to be listening, what do you do right now?
Sure. Well, this is exciting, Will. We have been talking about this for a while, and it is exciting to be part of it. And first off, I want to say thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I work for County Technical Assistance Service, CTAS. Have two different jobs with CTAS. I'm the manager of all of our field staff, and that encompasses county government consultants, property assessors, environmental, law enforcement, and fire EMS. And my other job, my primary job, is I'm the jail management consultant with CTAS. Yep. And so get the opportunity to work in all 95 counties, get the opportunity to work certainly with TCI on quite a few different projects. Just as your experience is that it's sort of every day is a different day. The questions come from sheriffs, jail administrators, healthcare folks, county attorneys, county commissions. It's just all over the board. And obviously some projects, or there's some projects that get very intense, very in-depth, just as you and I got an opportunity to spend with the county yesterday, debriefing a report that we've been involved with for some time.
Yeah.
It's probably the best job I've ever had, because there's just so much flexibility, and you really get stretched a lot. Just getting the opportunity to talk to different folks, meet folks, and seeing things that, help you scratch your head on sometimes, and then seeing some things that you got a really easy solution that, help people work through.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing about, working with jails, and you think you've seen it all and then something else happens. And that's that is the best part of it. The one thing I love about it is not the time to make the donuts. We've made the donuts in the past, and however, that doesn't prepare you for what is to come once you get in, as a jail consultant for CTAS or with TCI. It seems to never. I remember the shock of inspecting a jail that was so old, and it had natural air conditioning coming through the hole in the roof when I first started with TCI. But that's just the tip of the iceberg on the things that I've seen across the state, and not all bad. I mean, some of it are just, I've learned so much more about how everything differs from one area to the next. But one thing, I want people to know, where you came from, like, how you got here, how, and not how you developed your relationship with us necessarily, but, just how you got here. I know you're from Cleveland, Ohio originally, right? I mean, I want to know back to that. Like, what made Jim Hart today?
Actually, I'm from a small town, Macedonia, Ohio, that's about 20 miles on the outside, southeast side of Cleveland, Ohio. Small rural community. Actually, I was the fifth generation to live on the family farm, and at age right before my 6th birthday, I guess my family built a house, and we moved off the farm into a residential neighborhood. Yeah, just sort of typical upbringing of playing baseball, playing football, playing just different sports. A small rural community that everybody sort of knew each other, had a huge family of different relatives that we were constantly around and interacting with.
It sounds like you were Catholic growing up, because I was Catholic growing up.
I was an altar boy. Went to Catholic school 1st through 6th grade. Downside of, I guess at a young age, my dad died when I was 5. My mother never remarried, but she raised 4 kids and did a fantastic job. And we encounter in talking to people, because part of our job is getting to meet people and interact, and what you're about, what are your interests, those kind of things. But any single parent out there that we interact with, I always give tip my hat to them, because they have to do it's a struggle. I mean, it's truly a commitment to whatever profession they're in, whether it's corrections or any other profession. But it's truly a struggle for them to commit to the family as a sole breadwinner and taking care of the family, but taking care of themselves and taking care of their career and advancing themselves. So. Yeah,
it takes a village type.
Well,
I'm just telling you, I can't imagine today in the world we live in when you growing up. While my parents were married for the majority of my childhood, the one thing is my father's work took him away for significant amounts of time. But, if it wasn't for my both sets of grandparents, for my aunts, my uncles, because I had over 30 first cousins just on one side. And, but, we, with my aunts and uncles and things like that, we were like brothers and sisters, and we were just a tight-knit family. And if it wasn't for my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, I don't know. I think it would have turned out different in a lot of ways, just because you'd have been exposed or basically set out on an island versus,
Yeah, it's interesting, because all the aunts and uncles have all passed, now.
Yeah.
But the cousins, the first cousins, we're still in touch and still interact and still see each other from time to time. So it truly is that family, as you said. It's critical to who you are and what you're about, and knowing that there's somebody that's sort of looking over you and guiding you and mentoring you or coaching you or tying the knot in your behind when you're starting to stray somewhat. So.
Yeah, it kind of it does really, in a lot of ways, not just your parenting when you're growing up with a tight-knit family. It provides almost your sense of not just morality, but your who you are and your entire being as a person. Like you can always look back to certain circumstances or certain people that you can tie that value that you have, and I think it led me to where I am, even though I have a way different story and a way different way to get there. It still ties you into multiple people, and that actually, to me, makes you more, because it's not a groupthink situation. It's more of a it teaches you how to be a little more of an individual and work, and talk to different people, because not every single cousin or aunt or uncle is the same. It helps shape you for who you are and your personality.
Well, we encounter through life different individuals, coaches, teachers, people in your religious community that have an impact on your life, leaders in various jobs that you have over your career, and they have an impact on you. Some of it is very positive, and as I've told young officers over my career, I've tell my kids, my grandchildren, that you take what you can. Those little tidbits, and sort of put it in your toolkit to help you, what works, what doesn't work. But there's also those individuals that I sometimes don't think that they realize the impact that they're having on you, the negative impact.
True.
And I'll tell everyone to take that too and put that in your toolkit, and realize that that situation that you encountered, or how you were treated, or how a decision that was made that wasn't well thought out, use that when you're put in that position to recognize how it will benefit you, your organization, will benefit the people that are around you, or benefit the people that are looking to you for that decision, that right. And it may not be an absolute correct decision, but at least they know that you made that decision based on what you believe to be the best course of action to take. So one thing I have 2 children that are teachers. One of the things I stress with them is that you as a young person, you may not realize how you're impacting the lives of kids. And it's as you mature and as you grow, some of the things you say, some of the things you do, can really help a kid to either stray off the track or reflect on that comment that you made, or reflect on how you interacted or you behaved in a situation that you were confronted with. And so just keep in mind that people are looking at you, and they're role modeling the way you act or respond to whatever it is.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is, I've looked at it, and I know there's definitely teachers or coaches that have had, serious impacts. But I will say one of the things that's always impacted me was the best teachers I ever had were teachers that allowed you to they didn't send you down a path, not an intentional path. Like coaches, there's lots that have taught me organization and discipline and how to do that to be successful, because you see that result on the end. Where it was teachers, it was more about not trying to make me into something. It was more the ones who were like, hey, let's explore, let's find out what's going on and find the best way for you to learn. And it's okay to question and things like that, versus, I guess the popular term floating around right now is, indoctrination or whatever in a school setting. That's not that, I remember those teachers for whatever reason, I've been so far out of school now, but, if it was those certain teachers that were trying to tell you, you need to study at least 3 hours a night, and if you don't, I'll notice immediately. I just remember those going, there's different strokes for different folks. And, but the best teachers where I felt like I performed the best. I mean, this is the way I enjoyed learning. It was an interactive approach, and it was about what we were supposed to be doing, not, trying to create you into the image of something they think you might be. Those were the best teachers to me, the ones who just were engaging, and they had rules too. Hey, there's a line you can't cross. But
you're going to thrive. You're going to thrive where you feel best at, or you feel comfortable with what you like is where you're going to thrive. And trying to fit yourself into a mold that you really aren't, you're going to. At some point in time, that fraud is going to come out.
Yeah.
And it's not a negative fraud. It's just people realize that this is not what you're about. You realize that this may not be what you're about or your thing.
Well, and that's the thing, like going back to, building who you are as a person. That's if we go back to jails, over my time working in jails and over the time, speaking with individuals who were incarcerated and who were kind of in that vicious cycle, what you realize is their impact circle, and one of those things was broken, whether it was the family or whether it was the community or whether it was even in school systems. You start talking about those things with them, and there's a piece of that that's really, really broken, and where we talked about learning from mistakes or taking those mistakes as lessons, good, bad, or indifferent, whether it's my mistake or someone else's. It's amazing how the people that end up in jail, it's almost inevitably something that has impacted them and everything we just talked about. If they're in that vicious cycle, sure, there's people who end up in jail that don't have, that it just happened. It was a mistake. But then you got Jeffrey Dahmer. It's like, how the hell did that happen?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But next thing, I guess, I don't know, where did that take you? Like just your your growth and who you learn from and talking to them, what did that do in your life?
Well, I wasn't a good student as a kid. School was one of those things that I spent my time thinking about trying to get outside and going and doing other things. So I was not, in fact, I don't think I got my first A until I went to college.
That blows my mind.
I remember I'd been in the Marine Corps for a while, and I came home griping one day about them, the leadership, and my wife commented, "Well, you could do something about it." And I said, "Well, what's that?" She goes, "Go to school, go to school, put up or shut up," kind of the conversation that she had, one of those, reality checks with me. So I said, "Okay, I'll take a class, but you got to take one with me." And so we took an introduction to criminal justice and an introduction to psychology class. We were stationed in California at the time. Man, I loved it. Yeah. It was great. But I struggled all the way through school, and school wasn't my thing. And, that led to the next class and the next class. And, today I have my master's degree, but, it's just those different interactions, people like, my grandfathers who one was a carpenter, one was a farmer, and, one was an Irishman, loved his beer, loved his pipe, and the other one did not drink, did not smoke, but both of them had very strong, their faith background. Yeah. That influence, because I mentioned that I lost my father when I was a young man. Not that my mother didn't do a great job, but, sometimes you need a guy or a man to sort of put in, to keep you in the straight and narrow. We moved to Florida when I was, I think I was a junior in high school, moved to Florida. Again, school was just not I always worked. I always had a job, some kind of thing, whether it was a newspaper route or working at a ski lodge in Ohio or working construction. I always did something. It wasn't that I was lazy at anything. It's just, I just sort of just did whatever came my way. And I remember one day I was at work, actually, and I told my boss I wasn't feeling well at noontime and left. And went to a Marine Corps recruiting station and joined the Marine Corps. Just like that.
That's phenomenal.
No thought or anything else into it. So
see the world.
Yeah. So
yeah. No, that's awesome. And let's say that's awesome. I mean, sometimes when you're going through those things to the point where you're like, I'm going to go to the station out of the blue and join the Marine Corps. And again, thank you for serving our country. That is an amazing thing. That I come from a family that is just steeped with military and enlistment to officers. We were a military family on kind of on both sides of my family. But I know this about you is that once you got into the Marine Corps, that's what was kind of the first step to the path that you're sitting here today. And I'd love to hear something about that.
Well, two things, and you were talking a little bit ago about the thing that happens to a person and it leads them to getting arrested and going to jail, and it's sort of what you do with that. It's do you suck it up, buttercup kind of thing, and okay, you made a mistake and you grow from that and you move on and you learn from your mistakes. While I was doing nothing criminally wrong when I decided to join the Marine Corps, but it was like I worked Monday through Friday. I was graduated high school, worked Monday through Friday. On, Saturday and Sunday, we'd go to the beach because we lived in Southwest Florida, blow my paycheck. Monday, I would have enough money to fill up my tank of gas, work Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, go to the beach. And it was just like that cycle. And it was like, I got to do something, got to do something with my life. And I think that each one of us has, we have that decision. That we have that decision to make. And that's why I joined the Marine Corps. I wanted to be a heavy equipment operator. and went to Miami to do the enlistment process. And they said, well, we can't sign you up as a heavy equipment operator, but we have a deal for you, kind of thing. And they said, we can give you a 3-year enlistment contract, and it would be an open contract, and we think that you might be able to get something that you like then. Being an 18-year-old kid, I'm like, okay, sounds good. So I enlisted. It was the night before graduation from boot camp. The drill instructors were, calling our names out and reading our MOSs, what the job was that we were going to have, and read off my name, and Hart, Brig Rat, and the guy next to me was a guy named Steve Jones, and they said Jones, Brig Rat. And so we're sort of standing there online wondering what a brig rat was. I had no clue. So
you knew what the brig was, I'm sure.
No, at that time, no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. And so we then we went on our it was in the evening, so we were on our time where you shine your boots and all that kind of stuff. And so we did like two good Marines would do. We rock, paper, scissored. Steve lost. He had to go ask the drill instructor what a brig rat was, and after a lengthy period of time of mountain climbers and bending struts, he comes back down to where we are and says, we're going to work in a jail. And he was sweating and everything else. So that's how I got into corrections, my start in corrections. So.
That's fantastic. And those certain markers like that will lead you on a path, and I'm not going to go into depth, but I was headed on a completely different career path, and a friend of mine who worked in corrections, actually before he got into adult corrections, and he worked for a county in East Tennessee for over 10 years, and then came back to the county we were working for at the time. But before that, he was with juvenile sex offenders that he was working with, and I happened to be in college bouncing at a bar. I had like 10 different jobs. It seemed like I was delivering pizzas, doing things, but I was in school, and he's like, man, I think you'd be pretty good at this. And it was just one of those markers, because at that point, the industry that I was going into completely got flipped on its head. And the industry was downsizing, and not that I was like, this is temporary till I figure out exactly, what I want to do with the rest of my life. And that's how I ended up even getting into it. But I'm not going to go into great detail. So what happened in the Marine Corps? Like, where did you land first? How did that change your perspective on, or what ended up making it the thing you wanted it to do? I was stationed I spent time in San Diego, Camp Pendleton, San Diego, California on a naval station, Camp Pendleton, California, Parris Island, South Carolina, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Quantico, Virginia, Headquarters Marine Corps in Arlington, Virginia. I did my basic corrections training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. And I never asked for anything that I ever got. I had multiple meritorious promotions. I was strongly encouraged to apply for the Warrant Officer program at a point in my career. When you get selected to be a commanding officer, it's based on your performance, those type of things. When I had that opportunity, never asked for any of those things. I was reached out to. Different jobs I've had the opportunity to travel all over the country doing consulting work and training and those type of things, and never asked for any of that. Never asked to come to work for CTAS. I was reached out to and said, we think you would be a good fit in this. And I think it was just those the different experiences working as a line level CO. Mm-hmm. All the way to a commanding officer of a confinement facility, to being a jail administrator, to being at one point in my career being the head of the Marine Corps Corrections branch over Marine Corps Corrections.
it's just when you got into a position, you did the best that you could, and learned from your mistakes. But I think that just having good leaders that recognize there's a little bit more that you have to offer.
Yeah.
And that constant sort of pushing you a little bit more. And then, then you get that next assignment or next promotion or next whatever the job is. And were there jobs that I did not like? Absolutely. But, you just did what what the right thing to do was and keep moving forward.
So what was the worst one? I always like that question.
Well, the worst one I didn't get. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and I was a shift supervisor. I worked the evening shift, and just loved working security. And the officer that was over programs said, "Hey, we've done some screening of some staff NCOs, and we're going to send you to, I think it was Fort McClellan it was San Antonio, Texas, to a corrections counselor course, and you're going to come back as a corrections counselor." I said, "Absolutely not. That's not my ball of wax." But so I avoided that. But I really. I did step out of corrections for a brief period of time in the Marine Corps. I did a tour as a drill instructor at Parris Island, and very rewarding to have the honor, I'll say, of training young men to become Marines and then move forward in their career. I can't say that there's any one job that I really did not like. There were periods of times, as there's those lousy days that you have, or lousy weeks. And I always pride myself in thinking that during this period of time, there's some good times, that I've had, and you work through this. And once you work through it, then, the sunlight comes back out again. So.
Yeah. And some of the worst experiences, though, make some of the best memories.
Oh, yeah.
Because you look back and there's nothing better than reflecting on something that just was a dumpster fire, and you made it out of it. And if anyone was with you witnessing the dumpster fire or part of that dumpster fire, and you made it out unscathed, that is some of the best some of the best situations and memories, and forget learning lessons, just something to laugh at.
Well, I worked for this captain one time, and he just wasn't a good leader. And there was I think there was like 6 of us that worked on him, but were staff NCOs, and he just wasn't a good person. The way he treated us. So he decided, he had been there for about 6 months, and he decided he was going to give us what his fitness report would look like, our performance evaluation would look like if he was to give it to us at that time. And the best mark that any of us got was like a below average. That was the best. And, it flew all over everyone in it, but everyone just sort of shrugged it off. My Irish temper was boiling, so I had a conversation with him, and it was sort of as I was told him, we need to step outside and have a conversation. The other staff NCOs and the other 5 that were standing there is like, sort of that OS. What are you thinking, Hart? Keep your mouth shut. Yeah. I spoke my piece, let him know what I thought, of his paper. I handed the paper back, even though I wanted to throw it to him. But, the relationship then, it was better, much better, not only for me, but for the rest of them too. He realized that he had screwed up. I
gotcha. Yeah, I bet you got in better shape real quick after that conversation, I'm sure. So I guess probably the next thing is like, what is the wildest thing when in the Marine Corps, like, when did you realize, this is real, working in a jail facility or one of the correctional facilities in the military, where you're like, this isn't just, somebody who drove off the base or was late, 15 times from getting back on the base, and we're just putting them in the brig for the weekend. When did you step in and realize, hey, this is not a babysitting gig. This is for real?
You know, as a young Marine in corrections, you know, actually as a young man or woman, you sort of at that age, that 18, 19, 20 years old, you feel indestructible. Like, you know, bring it on.
Oh, yeah.
Anything that you can. And so there were a variety of things that occurred, but there was an issue that happened. It was I was working as a shift supervisor, and we were going through our segregation unit with a medical officer who was doing medical screenings of people that were being placed on disciplinary segregation, a restricted diet. And this sergeant that was working segregation, he comes over to me. He goes, "Hey, this inmate won't get up." And I said, "Okay, I'll be there in a second." So as we walked, the segregation unit was sort of like a horseshoe configuration. Mm-hmm. Get to that cell, and it was a couple cells ahead of the medical officer, and had them open the door of the cell door and try to get the inmate's attention. He wasn't budging. So I just shook he had a boots on, shook his boot. He was up and had me up against that wall before I could take a step backwards, you know, and so the fight is on.
Right.
And he has me up against the wall, off the ground. I wasn't touching the ground. He was a big man. Has me pinned up against the wall. Wasn't hitting me because he had me pinned. He was fighting off two other Marines. He was fighting off two other Marines with his other arm and winning. I was winning. And so he took care of us, but he slipped, and then we got control of him, and the fight was over. So I mean that one right there, it was sort of like there was nothing you could do. I mean, there was just nothing. There was nothing. I mean, I couldn't even reach his body because he had his arms are so long. He was just this big man. So it didn't matter if I was swinging or whatever. I wasn't reaching him.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a bit in. I mean that's what I mean. One thing that anyone that I've known that's worked in military corrections, and I had a guy I worked with locally who told me that once. He said, when you're working, in the U.S. and all you're dealing with was soldiers, he goes, every one of them knows how to pretty much do what you do.
Yeah.
So it's not a situation where you handle things with kid gloves, because that person, there's a good chance that they could kill you with their bare hands. I mean, that's one of the things he had let me know.
Well, to roll that clock forward, about a year later, I get a phone call. I was a shift supervisor still, same facility in California. Get a phone call, and it was a unit sergeant major. And you could hear all this screaming and yelling and banging in the background. And the sergeant major goes, "I need you to bring a group of Marines down here right now. I've got a Marine that's going to go to jail, go to the brig, and I need you to come get him." And I told the sergeant major, "We don't do that. You bring him to us, and we'll take care of him when you get here."
Yeah.
So an hour or so later, I get a call from Central Control, said that there's a sergeant major here that said that, he's asking for you to come help, and go out there. And the sergeant major says, "We're here. We got the Marine out in this vehicle, this transport vehicle. We need you to come out and get him." So I grabbed two sergeants with me to walk out there, and there must have been 30 Marines surrounding this vehicle in a circle. And we go walking out, and one of the sergeants that was with me was one of the sergeants that was in that cell fight. And he puts his arm up in front of me to stop me. He goes, "Do you see who that is?" Oh yeah. He goes, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I said, "Well, we're here now. We're committed, and we got plenty of backup." And there were the Marines in the perimeter circle. There was Marines with torn uniforms. I mean, no covers. They had been in a fight.
Oh yeah.
With this guy. So I go walking up to the door and open the door, and he says, "Hey, Staff Sergeant." I said, "How you doing?" Whatever his name was, and I said, "Do you remember me?" He goes, "I remember you." He goes, "Staff Sergeant, I have no beef with you. You and I have already had our go around." and you know what I could do to you. I said, I sure do. I said, there's a lot of folks here that want to, take care of business if you need business taken care of. And he says, I have no beef with you. I will do whatever you want. All right. Get out of the vehicle. I'm going to put these restraints on, so on. And he just walked. Everybody was looking at us like, what in the world did you say? What did you do to make that happen? He was a violent man, big man, and but you say what happened that made you realize this is serious? I mean, there's a lot of things, whether it's a suicide or a suicide attempt, or the fights that you're involved in, or the realization of a career Marine who has just been sentenced to death. And you're looking at it with your lens as a corrections professional, but realizing that person that you're looking at, that you're interacting with, is they're going to die at some point in time because of the very serious offense that they committed. And I think that all of that accumulation of stuff just sort of helps you grow and mature into what you're doing. Yeah,
and even beyond that, there's a lot of scars. Both physically and emotionally for the officers who deal with that. I'm sure not just in the in the military. I mean, when you look at, I was looking at some PTSD stats and from multiple sources and some studies that have been done across the the country, and I don't know if people will believe this or not, but the fact of the matter is it's almost double the rate that corrections officers experience PTSD than, EMS, firefighters, or police, just because of the constant heightened awareness that you have to live in, and the sudden, many times, things that can happen inside of those, jails or correctional facilities. And, and just the fact that, you're going to go to work and have to deal with something. I mean, I remember working with a guy who was sitting out in the parking lot, and I can kind of see the way he's looking, and I go sit in his car with him. I'm like, hey, is everything all right? And he was like, yeah, I know what's about to happen. And he goes, and I'm sitting here contemplating how much longer I can do this. And it's a tough reality, that everyone has to deal with. But
I actually had an officer suicide that nobody saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody saw.
Yeah. And thank goodness this guy didn't. But that one too many events, especially back then where it really wasn't at the forefront, that's where it could have potentially led. Luckily, they were strong enough to realize that they don't want to do it anymore or subject themselves, because he was married with 2 young children, and it was one of those situations where he had to go in and deal with something every single day, and that has such a profound effect on people, and I know that again, the scars and the the marks, and they're not just external, they're internal, and I know, I'm not saying that, I'm not talking about you specifically, but all those guys you worked with and ladies that you worked with, and the same with me, you see that happening, and there's some wild things that happen. That's kind of why, as when it's real, and then I'm glad you expanded on that to say there's so many, because there is.
Well, I commend you for recognizing that officer who, just the look, that there was something there, and the engagement. And I think that that's something that anybody worth their salt, you don't have to be a sergeant or a lieutenant or a captain. You can be just another corrections officer that recognizes something isn't right, something is off, and do something. We make certain that everybody's back is covered when we go on a cell extraction, or something happens, or somebody gets out of control in intake or booking, those type of things. We got to have that same approach, that same mentality when somebody's struggling. And, people are very private. They have family problems. They have sick kids. They have, I told you yesterday about my granddaughter. there's issues that are going on in people's lives that people don't think that they need to talk about. And anybody that's worth their salt, in my mind, that recognizes that there's an issue, just say something, to interact with, to support, or let you know, hey, I'm here. If you need something, I'm here, whatever, I'm not going to push you, those kind of things. But, that's what I think part of this, this career is growth in being a people person, but growth in leadership and growth in really caring about your people and who they are and how you can best support them in order for them to best support themselves. One of the things in sheriff's offices is that nobody, just like me, nobody grows up wanting to be a CO. And what I would always tell, particularly in a sheriff's office, what I would always tell young officers as part of the orientation is you're going to be here for however long, and you commit yourself to this job, to the betterment of what we're trying to accomplish here. I will commit to whatever it is that you want to do in your future to support you. And if it is you want to be a police officer or a sheriff's deputy to go out to the academy and move on, I will do everything I can to support you, providing you've done everything you can to support what we're trying to accomplish here. And I'd write letters of recommendations or do whatever I had to do. Did it kill me to lose that person? Yeah, it hurt the organization because they were a quality person, but that's what I committed to. I'll support you. You support what we're trying to accomplish.
And you bring up a good point there, Jim, is that's, sometimes you learn from the things that you're like, why does that happen? And I guess the easiest way I can break it down is, you have places out there. I mean, I know you've seen them all across the United States where, and public perception is, the jail, that they never get paid the same typically. They, benefits wise, as far as like, legislation to help them, stand on equal footing. A lot of those things don't happen, but part of that is the outside perception and kind of the past, because I will say it's changing immensely in our industry. But kind of the past thing was like, well, corrections officer is this, training to be a deputy, being a deputy out on patrol was the, like that was a promotion, right? And I'm not saying that that's not a difficult job, because I've seen people who've done one and can't do the other on numerous occasions. But I guess it's that behind the wall syndrome that I personally witnessed at times where that was kind of the mantra pushed around. And I just always believe that if you create that stigma, or if you create that perception, or mostly internally, then things will never change related to that. And how can you move forward without changing that idea? Well, that's kind of what we're doing here today, because it's been my mission to change that idea and not to look negatively on any aspect of corrections, but to kind of expose that, hey, you don't see us as much because we're doing some dangerous work behind those walls. But we're here and we do, more than you possibly could understand. And part of it's the human element and understanding how to communicate and how to deal with sometimes impossible situations. I mean, absolutely impossible situations.
Well, corrections is a closed environment.
Yeah.
People can't just walk in off the street and just walk in and say, hey, I want to walk around.
Yeah.
They can't do it. And I know you've given tours. I know the say hundreds of tours that I've given of different officials or different groups or leadership groups. And as they walk out, they're in awe that they never realized everything that was going on, whether it's classification issues or programming issues or access to recreational issues or the security issues that we have in play. They never realize what's going on. And so stressing with our staff that firm, fair, professional manner that you handle the population you're dealing with. I'm only 5'9", I'm not a big guy, and I would rather talk my way through a situation than have to put hands on. But if we have to put hands on, we're trained to prepare to do that. But you people that are in, for the majority of people coming through our jail, it's going to go back to our community, and it just their kids, their grandchildren are connected to your kids and grandchildren. You've gone to school with them. You've grown up around them, and so you're going to see them when you get out, and that's the hard part, I think, for the county corrections as compared to Marine Corps corrections.
Yeah,
but you're going to see them interact with them again in the community. How you handled them and interacted with them and you treated them inside custody in that closed environment is the same interaction that you would hopefully are going to have on the outside in a positive manner, if you will, in a professional manner. The other twist there is because it is a closed environment, we're probably the worst of telling the community about what we do.
Yeah, 100%.
And
we're the worst about leaking outside of our inner circle of, maybe having friends outside of what we do. Yeah. We're the worst group. I mean, one of the studies that I was reading is exactly that's part of the isolation issue which I think attributes to it is because it's such a closed environment that that circle just starts to shrink over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, there's so much that I always talk about, and you've been with me when I've talked about this in the past, when we start thinking about, the inmate population today has changed. It is a more violent, more sick, mentally ill, have substance use disorders, and how we have to deal with those folks. We can't deal with them alone. We don't have the skill sets necessarily to deal with them alone. So it requires, healthcare providers and mental health providers. But the community owns part of this too. And I always talk about the reach in and reach out. If you've got community services that addresses the needs of these persons that are in custody, those community services should look similar, if not the same, inside custody as they do outside. And we make that linkage, that connection.
Yeah. But an interesting point, because the way my mind works, I'll completely forget about it before I come back to it. You make just an amazing point about mental health services and things like that, and with the whole idea of being a closed, that you're closed in this building, and maybe this is controversial, but to me it's not. That it's amazing to see, no matter where you are, dollars flowing around for community support for rehabilitation and drug and alcohol addiction and, different community resources or hospitals that are set up. And I mean, even into the prison systems where there's, psychiatrists and things that are kind of a whole community of services provided. Yet what's the first contact? And this is what I like to say regarding that, because I sent you a video yesterday, and we can talk about it another time. Just kind of this, it's supposed to be an educational video on the differences between jails and prisons. And it couldn't be, there's some things that are accurate, but in general, it's just a bunch of garbage. It's 50% bullshit. I mean, I'm just calling it like it is. But that's part. I mean, the person who made that probably had no intent to create some false narrative about it. But the thing is what people, and I tell this to groups I speak to. I mean, remember I was speaking to the group of mayors and county commissioners one time, and I told them, I said, if you think jail is just, Otis is drunk on the weekend, or it's just misdemeanors, as this, video implied and said, hey, if you want to spend time, you want to do it at the county jail. Yeah, no. Because the way I look at it, sure, Otis is in that jail, but so is Jeffrey Dahmer. And people can't really wrap their minds. And many times before that super dangerous person ever enters a prison, they've spent significant time in that local jail. And with that, going back to what I was saying, is it's amazing how many resources are pumped into end use. Yet there's the first encounter someone has, inside of a jail, maybe they were dealing with issues that corrections officer isn't equipped to handle. Because the thing is sure, we could train every correctional officer on the planet how to handle certain aspects of that. But their number one job is keeping the community safe, keeping the inmate population safe, and keeping their fellow officers, safe. So do they need to become, counselors on everything, or A&D counselors, or what? No, that's not the role. Sure, there can be components of that help them interact and engage. But I just see all of these resources being pumped into all of these other, it's not bad. I don't think it's negative that these things are pumped out there to the community or to larger institutions that have a bigger visibility or have larger scope of visibility. But your local jail has the person who's headed down a true path of coexisting alcohol and mental health disorder. And it's the landing spot in the largest institution in any county that deals with mental health. It is the largest mental health institution in any county or any jurisdiction, is your local jail. 100%, my opinion, but backed by statistics. I'm sorry to get off on a tangent, but
no, you bring up a real good point, because while the young man and woman that are working the front lines, or the first line supervisors that are dealing with that Jeffrey Dahmer that's walking in the door, or Otis that's walking in the door, you're right. They have to be prepared with who they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. But as we progress in leadership, we have to stretch ourselves in our education and our knowledge and our expertise in that area. And when you become a jail administrator, it is not just a title that you got and now you got some extra money. You are truly, in my mind, and this was stressed with me, this my first time I became a jail administrator or a brig warden, is you are a mayor of a city. Are you capable of managing a jail budget? How many times have we gone in and they don't know what's in their budget? Or are you capable of understanding the physical plant challenges that are going on, and what does it look like to start thinking about a capital improvement plan for your physical plant? How many times we talk to jail leadership that don't understand that? Are you capable of fully understanding of classification and housing plans and the impact of classification on the housing plan, or the housing plan impact on classification, or the human resource operation of a facility? There's just so much that's required. The food service budgets, the health care, the mental health care, the connections to the community. Are you engaged in the community? What committees or what groups are you part of in your local community, and not only being part of the community, but educating those folks, looking for resources to support what you're doing inside your facility. And too many times, I don't think we give an opportunity to truly grow somebody to finally we're there. I mean, there are some fantastic jail administrators that we have, but there's some that may have been put into the position prematurely, or because they do a great job at where they are at that point in time, but now they're really stretched.
Yeah. And
a lot of times when we're really stretched, we feel professionally embarrassed to say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so we as leaders, whether it's a chief deputy or a sheriff or someone else above them, has to recognize that, okay, what tools can I give you to help you start being prepared for what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's to me, that's what the mental health argument, and just thinking about it on the top of my head, it's a butterfly effect type deal, or the proverbial drop in the pond or the ocean that could potentially cause this massive wave, and to think that the first drop is usually at the jail level, and of course, think about how many people could have been properly introduced into recovery or, some proper mental health care in the jail. But let's not even, that's the most immediate impact to where we can divert those people from spending lifetimes in the system, is if we can impact that on a local level. But think about how many, this is that whole butterfly effect thing. Where I've kind of thought about it, but I've just put it together talking to you for some reason. But it usually happens that way in our conversations. How many officers could you have saved from injury or traumatic events, not only inside of that jail, or, what about the one out in the community who's been in and out and he's having, and an officer's having to respond and EMS having to respond because he had untreated mental health and some drug addiction or alcoholism, and he beats his wife to death. And that officer and that EMS person and the firefighters have to see that. If we'd addressed that the first time Joe Public walked in, maybe not the first time, maybe the first couple of interactions, to at least have some services go, you know what, this was kind of this incident, look into finding out who they are and try to help them with those types of services, could have saved all of those people. It could have saved, and let's say he's gone to jail 10 times or, forget that, 3 or 4 times. The butterfly effect also affects the cost in your local community. And, the project is, you haven't worked on your infrastructure projects within your county because, it's costing a ton to house how many people are in jail. It's just this whole, it's a mess. But to me, I see that as a entry point to maybe reducing not only recidivism, but to impacting the community. And speaking at the very beginning, we were talking about single moms and single dads and how that is. How many single parent households could we have avoided? I don't know. This is just me. I'll go in some deep rabbit hole, but I'll stop there. And one of the things I know is that you got a hard stop. But before we kind of wrap it up, we need to continue this conversation.
Would enjoy it, yeah.
Because we need to do a part 2. I know for people that are watching this is our first experiment with doing something like this. You're the reason I wanted you is because these are the types of conversations where they're broad scale, but we can also get to the granular. And, I already feel like I've developed not a new perspective, but kind of a new theory on, the impact and maybe presenting it and that type of format,
Sure.
So, but anyway, what I would like to close off with any closing comments that you have, and just anything you want to say to anyone out there, or if there's some just insane knowledge you can impart, it doesn't matter. Even if it's like don't eat yellow snow,
Well, this year, November of this year will be 50 years when I walked into my first housing unit to work in corrections. So it's
you're only 60, Jim. Was it 10?
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. And I've done a lot of things I'll say I've had the privilege to do a lot of things over my career and to interact with and work with a lot of great folks. I think that the last several years, as I interact with staff in jails, and just to see things or get feedback on things that you've had the opportunity to provide some information on, or provide some training on, or assist a county, with that jail that they're now working in, that you and I have been part of, the planning of it and the staffing of it, and the operating plans and all those type of things. It's just those little things that are rewarding. The opportunity, and you and I have done some joint presentations before mayors and commissions and what have you, and the opportunity to talk about a career that I love, that I've enjoyed, is just sort of that reward. I mean, that's it. And I guess the only thing I would be remiss in saying is that just having, a great spouse who, has been there and encouraged and supported and understands all the time away, that if when you go home to that spouse, or that spouse is there to support you. And in this job, I'm on the road constantly. Thankful.
Well, my wife, she puts up with a lot from me, and she's just amazing for, maybe sometimes at the last minute, someone needs you and you've got to go. And I know your wife, I mean, she's amazing for doing it. And I know mine is for saying, look, I understand, but as soon as you can get home because of we've got this, let's make it happen.
Absolutely. It's critical. I mean, it's critical to have that work. And how I was going to sort of end with it is that whatever you're doing, whatever your career is, you've got to have that work-life balance. And what I always would tell young officers in our basic program is that I'd sort of poll the room. What is your hobby? What is your interest? What do you really like?
Yeah.
And I would tell them is that when you get to the point where you don't want to do that anymore, or you don't like that anymore, or you don't have the energy for that anymore, it's time to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
It's time to let somebody know that this is starting to get to me. So keep that work-life balance, keep that positive attitude, even though things get real lousy sometimes, you'll work through it.
Yeah.
And
well, Jim, it's been great. We've worked with we spent the last couple of days together doing another project. But I want to thank you for coming here and doing this. It's an honor because if anything, I do have conversations with people across the state, and I tell them sometimes what you and I talk about, just saying, well, this is the logic behind things and this is where it's important, but to get that, get it somewhat memorialized and understanding that I'm hoping that the people who work around this state in our local jails and workhouses and police lockups can see this and maybe create some food for thought and career path. But again, this is just part one of this conversation because I think I know we could talk for probably 4 to 6 hours on it, but maybe next time we can just do a couple of hours and do those things. Because if you notice, and if anybody's wondering, there's not a script in the room.
Nope, my paper's blank.
Yeah. So, this was the point of it, and just to get to know people and just talk a little bit about what we do, where we've been, how we've been there. And even if we talk next time and we talk about, I know you're a soccer coach. I love talking about that stuff too. So, but man, thank you. And I look forward to our next conversation and doing this. So I know you got to get somewhere. So great talking to you.
Thanks. You appreciate it.